So, Sam Petter, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. It's a real pleasure, and nice to have someone local on for a change. You're only just down the road from me, really, based in Kent, aren't you?
Yeah, we're in rural Kent, just outside Sevenoaks. That's where our head office is.
Fantastic, and I expect you've got the same weather as us today, which is a bit cloudy after all those brilliant days of sunshine we've been having.
Well, that rain was amazing, wasn't it? It was just like, oh, bring it on. It was so nice. Hadn't had rain for so long.
Yeah, it's nice and refreshing, wasn't it? But
Yeah.
let's jump into kind of the questions then. And the first thing I wanted to find out is I wanted to know what was your first job.
Well, my first ever job was working in a local sort of feed merchants in the countryside where I live, and I was only about 16. And but I have had lots of different sorts of jobs, ranging from being a lifeguard, working at McDonald's, strawberry picking. But my first serious job was working as a interactive designer for Dorling Kindersley. We worked on the very first multimedia projects, which was a really exciting time to be working in that industry.
Wow. So what's an interactive designer? Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I think my series started.
Oh,
Do
okay.
you, do you want me to repeat that?
No, that's okay. So what's an interactive designer do?
Well, it was working back in the first days of CD-ROMs and DVDs. So we were adding animation, audio. Do you remember? I don't know, you're probably too young, but the very first DVDs were really exciting. And you could, we'd go and visit a Mayan temple, but you'd be able to navigate through a Mayan temple and we'd animate it and add sounds of the Mayans. And so it was the early days of being part of a kind of immersive environment. And to be part of something like that was really exciting because as a graphic designer, I really enjoyed, moving it up against new frontiers and learning new things. And I've always really enjoyed learning new software and, being involved in cutting edge technology. So it was really great, actually.
Excellent. So did you study design at college or university or something like that, or did you go sort of straight into that role?
No, I actually started off doing a business studies degree, but I think it wasn't really for me. I guess I'm just more of a hands-on person, so I left that course and then I went back and started to be a typographer. And that's when I got the first job at Dorling Kindersley. But prior to that, in my kind of first work experience year out of business, my business degree, I was working for a small independent hi-fi shop called the Cornflake Shop, which
Okay.
was a brilliant example of a startup, actually. And we were in Wimble Street in central London, and you had to book an appointment to go in. And I was probably one of the first hi-fi repair girls. And I used to go around London with a silver case and fix people's hi-fis. And we'd have this listening room where people would come in and, we'd change all the cables, change the styluses, listen to all different types of music and, try and identify the differences between a kind of £30 speaker cable and a £3,000 speaker cable. And I think what I learned from that was the vision of the owner was brilliant, actually, and as a startup. But prior to that, my dad had always had his own business as well. So I guess I was always interested in having my own business. And I never really had a job, a proper job. I've always been freelance. So the first only paid job I've ever had was after being an interactive designer, I got a job with another startup, doing an interactive university search product. And they were from Australia. So they sent me to Australia to set up the office in Sydney. And that's what I
Wow.
did. So I've actually never really had a job, if you like. And I think the reason for that is my very first job, going back to when I was a feed merchant, one day, so I was at the local comprehensive, but I was doing something like 15 O levels. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like anything amazing, but they were talking to me and they went, seeing as you've got so many O levels, I'm surprised that you want to work here. And I was like, yeah, I probably got too many O levels to sweep the floor anyway. And that was like a joke, because they were always
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
ribbing me. So that the accountant was listening in on her headphones going, and she just walked straight in and went, "You're fired for being insolent and not doing what you're told." And I was only like 15, but it had a real impact on me because I just remember thinking, it doesn't matter how hard I try or what I do, ultimately I don't have control over my destiny. It's completely in someone else's hands. And I just remember even thinking then, like, this is absolutely rubbish. I was working really hard, doing my best for them, and they could just find any reason to get rid of me at any time. So that was,
Crazy.
apart from the brilliant role model that my dad set for running his own business and all the startups I worked for, that was really instrumental in me wanting always to work for myself. I just don't think I could ever trust in working for someone else.
Yes, that's interesting because I think everybody does something because of some pain that they've had in the past. Almost everything, It's like it's the sticker or carrot, isn't it, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But I
Mm.
think when they're both in combination, you can see the success your dad's had in his business and those other startups and how exciting that was, and then get the stick side of it so quickly for something that was is a throwaway comment, really, isn't it? But like you say, you see the negative side of
It
employment
wasn't,
quite quickly. It
yeah.
it probably
It
became
wasn't the
quite
first time.
powerful for you.
Absolutely, it wasn't the first time I was sacked either, and whether or not I was good or bad at my job, whether or not I was trying or I wasn't, and in my mind I was, it didn't really matter. The outcome was the same. That I didn't have any control. So it was actually interesting because then, so very early on, I was like, I'm never working for anyone else. That's just fact. And then I saw my dad, and I saw how and other freelancers. And I could see how that wasn't a model for me either, because it didn't necessarily buy you freedom. It did in one way, but in the other way, you only got paid when you were working for yourself, when you were working, and when you weren't working, you weren't being paid. So it was a different kind of freedom. But I think that was the very first dawning of realization about what scale and leverage and time, passive income really really meant.
Yeah.
So my first foray into business was I started a property portfolio actually back in the 90s, which was probably the best thing I ever did. And so that was in the early days of buy to let, and that has been a brilliant business on the side. But again, it's
Wow.
all about, for me, it's all about passive income.
Yeah, it's
I have
interesting
so
because
many
how old were you at the time when you started that business?
uh, the 20, well, I got given £3,000 when I was 23 by my granddad, which I guess back then was a reasonable amount of money. But I immediately bought a flat, and I couldn't buy a flat in the town where I lived because it was London. I couldn't afford it, so I bought somewhere else. So just the only place I could afford, and I had 2 bedrooms, and I sublet one room, which paid the mortgage, and I had a room for myself, so I could pay the mortgage and go down there and enjoy the asset. So that was the beginning. And then it was just the dawning of like, well, what if I leverage this, and if I raise some capital on this, when it's gone up, and then I can buy somewhere else. And that's just how I started. So the whole portfolio really was based on that £3,000 initial investment. And but that's not really the relevance. The relevance is how to leverage your time and scale what assets you have so that you can still earn while you're not working, right? Because
Yeah.
I really wanted to have a family, and I just didn't know how I was going to be able to do that, be there for them, and continue my career. And I guess that was back in the 90s. So it was
So was
early
that
days of being able.
Sorry, I was just going to say. So is that
No,
what
it's
was
okay.
driving you then to have the family? To be able to be there for your children, even though even at the same time earning money. Was that the kind of main driver for you to then start your own business?
Well, not really having a family, because I actually didn't know if I could have a family. I mean, it was still just an
Yeah.
idea, but it was definitely the idea of traveling or doing the things I loved. I've got lots of outside interests. Or if I did have a family, just being able to make choices. I think I really feel strongly about being able to make choices that I want to make. And I guess I don't really like being told what to do. That's part of it as well. So And I guess that's probably like my dad, who doesn't like being told what to do either. Um, so yeah, it was a combination. And as it turned out, having a family wasn't very easy for me. And it was lucky that I had a career where I was able to, do what I needed to do, um, to try and make that happen. And one of the things I did was I went away on a yoga retreat because I literally didn't know, what to do, where to put myself. I was completely adrift because for the first time someone has said, no, you can't have that. And it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to be able to have it. And that makes you want it even more. So I went away on a yoga retreat, trained to be a yoga teacher, just really for something to do. And it really, really helped me, like emotionally, and just helped me kind of center myself. And I came back and I was more in a problem solving frame of mind then. And so ultimately I did end up having my son. And later we adopted our daughter, who's now 14 and a half. So my son's 19 now.
Right.
And that was the start of Tatty Bumpkin, really.
Yeah. So talk me through what a yoga retreat is kind of actually like, because I've only got kind of vague ideas in my mind as to what that is, and I guess some people have a preconceived idea. It's all, you'll hear the term airy fairy or something like that around it, right? But it's obviously had a positive impact on you and your life. So tell me a bit more about the retreat.
Well, it was actually a yoga teacher training. So part of it was in London and part of it was in Dahab in Egypt. And it's just very focused. So it's learning as well. So it's slightly different to a retreat, I guess, but it has elements of a retreat in that you'd get up at 5 and you'd start with the meditation and chanting, and then you would do some asana, which is the physical practice. Then we'd talk about sort of theoretical aspects of yoga and spiritual aspects, and then kind of the same thing in the afternoon. And one day in particular, I mean, I met some amazing people on that course as well. Everyone's a little bit at a turning point, I would say. And one day we were doing Mona, which is a day of silence. Actually, it's 24 hours of silence.
Wow,
And that's really amazing. 24 hours is nothing compared with some of the other retreats where you go for 3 weeks. But it was really amazing. And they give you a pen and paper and off you go. Anyway, the funny thing was that day we went into town and we were in silence. So we were just, drifting around. And suddenly all the lights went out and there was a flash flood because it'd been raining in the Sinai. So the water came streaming down and just washed the town away. And we were probably, 500 yards away. And it was this almighty roar. It was dusk, so everything went dark. And then just everything just disappeared. And we were just went running back to the thing. We were like, to our kind of great leader, the town's been washed away. It's been a flash flood. It's really terrible. And she was just like, what will be, will be. Like this. We were just like, oh my God. Of course she's right. But still, it was the first time I'd really been in a natural disaster, where you don't actually know what's going to happen. Like nobody knows.
Yeah,
But
pretty
the magnitude
scary.
of it, is so much bigger than you or anything you've experienced. Anyway, so I just came back, and it just really just supported me. And one of the things in yoga is the only constant is change. So acceptance of change, understanding that we don't have any control. 98% of what we worry about never happens, and just learning to live with acceptance, really, and grace. So using the kind of that, it wasn't even conscious, really. It was more of an internal thing. Just moved on to the next stage of, okay, so that's not going to happen. What are the options? Okay, this one's not going to happen, and gradually moving down the path until we ended up with the most wonderful family. And of that, Tatty Bumpkin was born.
Yeah, so I guess listening to that, before you were saying you're quite wanting control all the time, right? And I guess that, like you say, helped you to be centered because it made you realize, okay, can't control everything, but I can control the next choice in my life and the next one and the next one, based on whatever's happened, or whether it's a natural disaster or whatever it is. At least you're in control of the next choice
Yeah,
of whatever happens next. That's pretty
exactly.
cool. So Tatty Bumpkin, then, how did that come about? Yeah, in terms of, right, you've come back from this retreat and training. What were you thinking? Were you, thinking to be a freelancer, set up one class and see what happens, or what? Talk me through what your thought process was next.
Yeah, at that time I was preoccupied with, having family and stuff. So I achieved that goal, and then I remember previously, my husband and I, we'd moved to this farm where we live now, which was my great aunt's, and at the time it was off grid. So it was literally like with Nell and I, there was like, I promise you, it was just like that. No electricity, no water. And he's a musician. So I used to work in London doing this multimedia job, and it was all a real challenge getting up there because it was in Savile Row, and I had to arrive looking half decent. And one day I just went, "Oh God, you're such a tatty bumpkin," because I was just, covered with leaves in my hair and all this sort of stuff. I had to get dressed with a head torch because there was no electricity, and so so I just thought, "Oh, that's a really good name." And then when Oscar was born, I trained to be a baby yoga teacher because I just felt like, I wanted a part-time job around him, and doing the interactive design and stuff. I was a bit older by then, and they were young, really sort of more, not more talented, but more sort of, they had more tech knowledge because they'd just come out of college. They're more current. And so I was thinking, yeah, maybe you need to do something that's less fast-paced. So I started teaching baby yoga classes, and I became a trainer in baby yoga. But it was one of those things actually where, so you did your training, it was amazing program. You go away and you didn't have anything, you didn't have any lesson plans, you didn't have any graphics, you had nothing. So because I'm a designer, I was starting to create the graphics, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. There's hundreds of us out there, and every day we're all recreating our own thing, some people
Yeah,
better than others. And it doesn't make any sense. We're all time poor. We've got loads of different skills. If we could collaborate and bring our skills into a kind of central pool and share our resources, wouldn't that be amazing? But that particular program didn't have territories or anything like that. It was a free for all, just go train, just go off, do your thing. And also they didn't go beyond 2 years. So I was like, yeah, but there's so much opportunity, because yoga was quite niche then. So it was very sort of a bit kind of out there, but
yeah,
I could see the benefits. And of course I love yoga. So that's when I just thought, okay, I'm going to start a brand, and starting a brand is what I love. So that's my thing, creating a sort of 360 products using, my skills. So that's the bit I've really loved.
yeah. Okay, so you were working with a group of other people, but then at some point you've gone, right, I'm going to create a brand and do this completely separate, and that's when you use the Tatty Bumpkin name. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't working with other people. That was the point. We were all sent off on
Right.
our own. So we did our training, and then we were very much alone. And in fact, a little bit of us was in competition because we might be next door to someone who was doing a similar thing. And again, that's a sort of weird, you're together and you're not. It's sort of a strange relationship. So no, so really, I think it was. I just thought, actually, I think because of my design background and because of I love creating stuff. I actually thought I can create a better brand around this. This isn't a brand. This is a teacher program, which is great. But if I create a brand that's all encompassing and I do the bit I'm good at, other people can benefit from that. And maybe they're good at teaching, or maybe they're good at sales, and they can take my product. And that was really the dawn of franchising. Although we started with a low-cost teacher training program, I got started with Unlimited, which is a social enterprise ward, and I was
Okay.
helping kind of mums get back into work with a low-cost training. But again, it didn't work because they'd go and sit in the village hall, and they really needed business support. They needed lesson plans, and I hadn't yet got the program, and so they weren't succeeding because they didn't have what they needed to be successful. So then I changed to a franchise because I realized actually this is the perfect kind of model, really, for women specifically who are time poor, but rich in skill set and motivation.
Yeah. No, it does make sense because not everybody's got that background like you of, being a graphic designer and is able to create their brand from scratch. So, and that can be so valuable when as a parent, you're looking at, okay, should I go along to this class or not? And yeah, if there's no kind of logo or branding or consistent branding to it, you might feel, okay, is this just some random person in the back of their shed, you know, delivering this?
Yeah,
Whereas with the brand, you feel, okay, they've got a structure. There's some process to their, they've honed it to some degree, haven't they? They've taken time, and I guess that's an
yeah.
important thing a brand can bring, isn't it?
In a way, I guess for me, it's more about if you create something that's good that people like and you have a methodology that works, then you should replicate it, because why keep going back to recreate the wheel? So that is the kind of motivation for creating something that's replicable, is learning from mistakes, putting all your knowledge and intel back in and creating a collaborative, trying to aim for perfection. But you can't do that on your own. You need R&D and research and development. You need people's input, and you can't be an island. So another thing with yoga is that it's looking at the ego and how that influences people's decisions. And so much of business and politics now is so ego driven, and people are very protective about what they've done, and there are millions of people around the world all trying to recreate the same thing, and they're not learning. And if you look at the education system example, we're just not learning from what past mistakes are. We just don't seem to move forward. We've still got a system that is, similar to what it was in Victorian era, where we put the emphasis on reading and writing. And why aren't we learning? Why aren't we recreating and collaborating and creating something better? So I think that's really my motivation. But my
Sure. So,
passion is the creativity. Yeah, go on.
so sorry, yeah. So I was just going to say, so you started franchising in 2007. Um, so at that time, I don't think there was too many. I'm going to bundle you into the kind of general term that's in the industry, the franchising industry, of children's activities, franchises around at that point in time. So
Yeah.
you must have been kind of a bit of a front runner in that respect. So how did you find the franchising model? And yeah, why did you decide to go ahead with it? Because I guess at that time it was more just food and beverage based franchises, right?
Yeah, I think because my absolute fixation with the kind of brand, and also the other key driver was passive income and scale, and I didn't want it to be about me. I think that was the big thing, because I felt like, what if I want to go off for a year, or what if I get ill, or what if it shouldn't be about me? And so that's why I made it about the character for starters, and also because it's a child-led business. I personally feel like adults tell children what to do all the time, and
Yeah,
I didn't want that. I want it to be about someone who shows empathy and mirrors emotion, someone who's a friend. And Tatty Bumpkin is deliberately neutral, nothing really special about her in a way, except gender neutral, first gender
sure.
neutral character. But so because of that, it's just like, right, I need to recreate something. I read the E-Myth, which is a book about a bakery, and it's impossibly hard when you're running a business and you only have 7 hours in the day, and you're just never gonna really get more than 7 hours in the day, are you? Working hours, 7 to 10 hours, you've only got 12 hours in the day. So that really struck me. I was like, yeah, 12 hours in the day, unless I get paid kind of increasingly more per hour, how am I ever going to really scale this? Because it's a teaching model. So
Yeah.
that's why the franchise model works really for us, because
Yeah,
you have
sure.
teachers
How did
working
you
for you.
find it though? Where did you go at that point in time to find out how to do it?
So, well, I think I got a Southeast grant actually, at that time, which got me a business advisor. I can't remember why I thought about franchising. I think it was through the E-Myth and just thinking about scale, thinking about thinking about it logically, really, like what was going to work for people like me. And there were people who were brilliant at teaching, but those people weren't good at business. So it
Yeah.
seems obvious to me that there are some people who are really good at they like that side and other people like that side. And actually, in this type of business, children's activity sector, I feel like they're quite exclusive. There's not many people who like to teach and who see themselves as a business business person. So that is a kind of another interesting thread to this in a way. So I think that's what led me to franchising. I had a grant from Southeast Development Grant. I got a business coach for a while, and they suggested they knew a franchise consultant who's called Tony Mandela, and he helped us write the ops manual. And I feel like the ops manual should be the Bible for every business. So we have one for our own office now, which is on Drive. And so everything goes in there so that nobody is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
So if I was to disappear off the face of the earth, in theory, this could still carry on as it is. And that's good. I don't want it to be about me.
Yeah, that's building a valuable business, isn't it? Rather than making you the linchpin of the whole thing. And like you say, if that crumbles, or that chain breaks for whatever reason, that could be the end. And I guess that's even more so important when you've got a franchise network, actually, because there's a lot on the shoulder of the franchisor if it's all on them and it's dependent on their knowledge and their ability to do something. Whereas, like you say, having that in an operations manual and a team that can pick up the pieces, that makes it more secure for everybody involved. So in that way, you're adding quite a lot of value to the franchisees that joined your network, I guess. So that's good. And how many franchisees do you have at the moment?
So I have to take the story back a bit, if I could just go back to your point you just made, which was, with that in mind, the very worst did happen over lockdown, and my partner died, my work partner Sue, who'd written the program. So she was our trainer. She was a pediatric therapist, so she'd put a lot of the developmental stuff in, and the very worst happened overnight with no warning. And so that was an example of where what happens, and actually one of the things that's come out of that has been that we've recorded all the trainings are now on platform on the Drive, and we made it even more resilient in a way. Because of that, we just sort of realized even more that these things do happen, and we won Lloyds Bank Small Business of the Year award for our pandemic resilience strategy, which was kind of built around those kind of concepts. But that also leads me on to answering your next question, which was how many franchises do we have? So at the start of the COVID pandemic, we had 32. And then we lost half the network during COVID. And the reason for that was really that even though we didn't charge royalties, we asked a small management fee of £50 a month. And even that was just too much. I think mentally, that was the biggest challenge people faced. I don't think it was a business thing. Business stopped, and for the most part, they didn't really get any support because they weren't limited companies. They didn't get furlough. Some of them got business support. So a lot of them had to go and get other jobs. But I think, even so, it was just the mental strain of it. And the ones that have hung on, we got a really good bounce back after COVID. Obviously, we're in the right space. Children's mental health and well-being. Finally, yoga is really recognised as being, important, especially for children. So we do have a product that people want. But it is hard to sell franchises right now. We did really well after COVID. Everyone was like, yeah, freedom. I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do. I'm going to start my dream business. So we did well. And then this year, obviously, cost of living crisis, interest rate rise, energy crisis, new government. All of that has meant that, it's harder to sell franchises right now. But there are ways and means, and we're working on different that's a good thing about being my own boss and having my own business, is that I can be nimble and flexible and think of other revenue streams and be crafty and cunning. And isn't that the kind of joy of having your own business, is that kind of problem solving?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's going to be to the benefit of any new franchisees coming in as well, is the fact that you're now, looking at the business and trying to add in, like you say, other revenue streams. So, yeah, further down the line, whenever the next franchisee joins, they're going to have the benefit of that, right? Which I think is really good. But just to to let you know, it's the whole industry is feeling something similar right now. I think there's a lot of uncertainty when a
Mm.
big event happens in the country. So obviously Brexit's played an impact at some points, the lockdowns, war in Ukraine, Boris Johnson resigning. There's so many things that mean that there's some uncertainty in people's
Yeah.
lives at the moment. So I think that's pretty normal to hear, and thank you for sharing that with us. But in terms of sorry,
I
please go
think,
on.
Ed, you'll probably agree that once we go into recession, franchising typically does really well. It's for any business, actually, it's uncertainty that kills it. So I feel like we've been through 2 recessions as this business. I mean, we've been around for like 16, 17 years. We have been through a lot of different events. So, but it's the uncertainty in the end, isn't it? That is worse than the event.
Yeah, exactly. Once it's happened, you know your
Yeah.
situation, you know the future, you know the direction. And speaking of that, what kind of are the future plans for you? So you're not now just Tatty Bumpkin anymore, are you? Your children inspired by yoga, and Tatty Bumpkin is part
Well,
of that.
yeah, yes, exactly. So when I started, it was Tatty Bumpkin program 3 to 7. Tatty Bumpkin was the character, Tatty Bumpkin was the company. Then we added Baby Bumpkin, which is 0 to 2, and Tatty Guru, which is 8 to 11. So now we go do the whole of primary. And so it felt slightly awkward to have the whole thing as called Tatty Bumpkin. So we changed it to children inspired by yoga, especially as now yoga for children is a thing. Yes, I mean, so the future plans, I think, are based around, not giving too many secrets away,
Of course.
are based around just looking at, what parts of the business are under stress and what parts of the business are doing well. Then, what assets we have, and then just applying really logical, simple sort of process to those facts. And being prepared to change direction maybe a little, or take a sidestep, or look at things in a different way. I think that's sometimes hard. You're on the tracks, aren't you? You just keep going in the same direction, you make the same mistakes, you just keep repeating the same things. And I'm really trying. I do a lot of sort of personal growth stuff. I listen to a lot of podcasts and books. I do a lot of swimming and sort of meditating that way. And I really try to come at it from different angles and different perspectives to stop making any mistakes that I might have made myself in the past. But it is hard, isn't it? You just create the
Sure.
same patterns. But I got a fantastic new girl who works for me, and it's great because she's just a fresh pair of eyes on it, completely. And it's brilliant. We work really well together. So it's kind
Yeah.
of scary, but it's exciting. I love change, and I love challenge, and I like risk to a certain degree. So go down
Yeah.
burning or rise,
Excellent. So, in terms of the people you look for then to join your franchise, what would that ideal person look like? What are their kind of desires, and what skill sets they need to have?
So our profile sort of does change quite a bit. At the moment, our avatar is called Georgina. She's 35 to 45. She has 2 kids. She's previously been a professional, so in whatever sphere, because we have ice dancers, models, business people, biologists. So it doesn't matter, whatever field, but she's been successful. She's had a career. She has really noticed, maybe as a result of lockdown, that she isn't there for sports day. She is missing out on key events. She also notices that people at school gates who haven't kept up their careers, maybe she doesn't aspire to be that. She wants to have self-worth. She wants to feel like she's growing as well and learning and progressing, as well as being a good mum. And so something like this is ideal for her because she has a skill set, she has capital to invest. That's important because right now, if you really need a second income, if it's not a second income as your primary income, I don't think now's a really good time to be changing track if you have a secure job. But
Yeah.
if you have that ability to make the change, now is a really exciting time to do it because our classes in particular, and I'm sure lots of children's activity classes, are really needed. And we really need to be there for the kids to give them life skills in how to cope with change and pressure. And, it's a disaster in the making. So it's an amazing product. It's a win-win situation, and it's super fun, super rewarding and challenging. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
Georgina would, be well advised.
It's interesting what you've mentioned a couple of times now, and that's the mental health of children and how yoga can impact that. So through lockdown, I was doing yoga with my kids, and they would be sort of story led kind of sessions that were good fun, and they'd laugh at me trying to do some of the moves that I've got no chance of doing because I haven't got the flexibility compared to them. But um, how what are the positive impacts for yoga? It'd be good to understand that from you.
So our classes are yoga inspired. So what that means is we take the holistic approach of yoga, which is looking at the mind, body, and the spirit, so emotional, physical well-being, and taking the whole child. And there aren't many activities that actually do that, right? So if you think of any activity, you're taking one aspect. So with these classes, then they're story based, but they involve yoga moves or yoga inspired. We're not asking for children to hold yoga positions, but we stretch the body in every different direction, which is unique to yoga. So within a class, you move every muscle in your body, and it's non-competitive, which is really important for young children as well. So it builds their confidence. And then underpinning that, there's key developmental principles, which are, not to get too deep, but I want people to understand that this is a serious developmental program. So you need good coordination, good postural control to hold your body, good sensory regulation to be able to take on board sensation and process appropriately. And then you need self-regulation to be able to become a fully functioning, integrated member of society. And so all of those 4 key developmental aspects are woven into the story using the holistic approach of yoga, using breath, using relaxation, using movement, and using sensation to form those neural pathways and help children to really have the life skills to cope with change, to cope with whatever life throws at them, to be rooted and grounded, and to have confidence in themselves.
Excellent.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So do you see those changes in those children?
Oh, infinitely. Unbelievable. So for example, we work at Glastonbury Festival and we work in the little kids field. And sometimes you'll be doing a session and you'll just notice one of the kids is really at ease, really comfortable with the movements, regulated, which means they're able to sit and listen or do activity or be still, but they're regulated, and they're just totally different to the other kids. And then you realize they've been to either a tatty class or a yoga class where they've been taught it's okay to be still, because so often now people think that children, if they're still, they're ill. Like, it just isn't a thing. Like, every advert you see for a kid's product or anything to do with kids is like, ah, and the music's really loud, the lights, the flashing, and it's like, yeah, kids having fun. Actually, how are we teaching them to be regulated? It's okay to lie down and do on the floor and just be, or it's okay to sit, or it's okay not to go and do something really active. So I feel like it's a balance. And yeah, that kids are natural yogis. They're born completely perfect, and then they spend the rest of their lives just undoing everything they were born with. They don't breathe properly. They don't move their bodies. They're consistently in a quad dominant position, at the desk, in the car, watching TV, playing games. So they're not opening their bodies. And they descend into the slide of atrophy and the sofa, as they get older.
I'm
So,
imagining, the ape through to man. It's kid through to
yeah,
man, and it starts to curve over like this. Is what I'm imagining from that.
yeah. And I mean, I just think if you don't use it, you lose it. And moving is so fun. The joy of movement is amazing. And it's hard, isn't it? There's no space, there's no time. But anything is better than nothing in little bits. So they really get it. Kids really get it, and it is a life skill that they will have forever. It's as important as swimming or football.
Cool, excellent. So, I wanted to find out from you, what sort of funny, weird, strange, or interesting stories you might have from your life or your career, because it sounds like you've done a fair bit of traveling, you've tried lots of things, and started your own businesses. I feel like you're going to have something really interesting here.
Well, yeah, it's quite kind of putting me on the spot, Ed. But no, the two things that came to mind, I guess, was one's quite recent, quite random. Was last week I was packed with crepe moss, and I thought that was completely weird because,
So you
what's
were
the chances? Packed. As a
oh,
photo was
Paps.
taken with me and Kate Moss, and it said Kate Moss and Friends. That was
Excellent.
hilarious because, I really don't generally frequent places where Kate Moss might go, can I just say? But we were at Glastonbury and we had tickets to see Primal Scream backstage. We were on the stage, and they're actually one of my favourite bands, but we happened to be next to Kate Moss. And anyway, the next day in the papers, there was a picture of Kate Moss and Friends watching Primal Scream at Glastonbury. And it was really funny because I didn't even know she was there. But also it was funny because I didn't even know it was her. So I was taking a selfie of myself and the band, and she was sort of smiling at me, but she isn't even in any of the pictures. But
Amazing.
also I was like, what does everyone wear backstage? Oh, I know, sunglasses. So I put on my sunglasses on in the dark with my sunglasses on. I'm so glad I did because it looks really good in the photo.
You look proper cool, yeah. I
Proper
can imagine.
rock star.
Yeah, who is this
I
rock
don't
star?
know. Yeah, exactly. Who is she, that mystery woman? I guess one of the other random things that happened is that we found an iguanodon metatarsal, and we ended up in the Dinosaur Museum in the kind of Hall of Fame, and that was quite random.
Wow. When
And the
and where was
story
that?
that was in the Isle of Wight on New Year's Eve. And it was sleeting. We were just walking, trudging on the beach, going, I will find a fossil. I will find a... And everyone else was going, oh, we're going home. And I dragging my son, we will find a fossil, Oscar, don't worry. And then there's this rock on the beach. And it's like, oh, yeah, there's a fossil. And everyone's like, oh, whatever, we're going. So I was like, I'm taking my fossil to Dino World and to get it analysed. Everyone's like, oh my God, you've finally gone mad. So I carried this rock. I mean, it really did look like a bone. I mean, it was quite obvious. So I carried it into Dino World and I was like, oh, can I see the paleontologist, please? And they came out and they're like, oh my God, this is the find of the year. This is an iguanodon metatarsal. This is amazing. And I was felt so super proud because everyone had dismissed me. Anyway, so it ended up in Dino Museum and everything like that. And he was like, we'd love to own an iguanodon metatarsal. And I was like, no, not interested. How much would it fetch? And he was like, £150. I was like, no, I keep it. Thanks very much. That's a good investment. And then the other one is I swam in the World Championships about 3 years ago, and
Wow.
Yeah, that far exceeded anything I ever imagined would be possible in my life ever. And I started swimming about 10 years ago because I'm really competitive, and my kids were never like that. They're brilliant and they're fantastic, but they weren't ever sporting geniuses in that way. So I realized I had to do it for myself. So I always liked swimming, but I was never a competitive swimmer. So I started swimming masters, and then I've ended up doing 2 Europeans and a world championship and top 10 ranking. And it's just brilliant. It's just so nice to have something for yourself. It's massively important just for me to have. No one cares. No one comes and watches. But I feel like it's also a brilliant manifestation of why yoga is so important, and in terms of future fitness and having a positive outlook and having that can-do attitude. I think it's such a great example of someone who never competed at all when they were younger, and I'm getting faster and faster every year. So you can get better at things as you get older. There isn't a time limit on it. So that's the thing I'm super proud of. That's quite a good story, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty
Unexpected.
awesome. Yeah, so I was going to say that's not many business owners get the time to do that, right? To be out there swimming and training enough to do that. So you've obviously built a business that's giving you the right kind of work-life balance that can allow you to do that, which is that's really cool. And I want to go back to the dinosaur bone. That's pretty amazing, because I've been down to Lyme Regis last year and spent ages trying to find a tiny little ammonite, one of those little ones.
Mhm.
Couldn't find them at all, and it's supposed to be famous, for that kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty impressive to find. Yeah, did you say an iguanodon bone?
Metatarsal. The thing is,
Metatarsal.
when you hold it, they cleaned it up and everything because they wanted to put it on their display. But when you hold it and you think this is something like, I don't know, I can't remember now, but like 250 million years old, it just puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? It's just like, oh my, I just can't believe it when I hold it.
Yeah,
Anyways, that was kind of
crazy.
a random, unexpected thing. So again, just goes to show, things can just change in an instant. One
Yeah.
moment you can be, Miss Average. Next, you're in the newspaper as Kate Moss's best mate.
You should. It'd been better if you were holding the fossil with you at the same time.
Or
Oh
even
yeah,
better, that would have just done
that
it,
would have
wouldn't
been
it?
the killer.
That would have
Yeah,
solved
definitely.
everything. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, final question I wanted to ask you then is, um, if you were to give anybody advice or somebody advice around investing in a franchise, they're looking at franchise brands, they're about to invest, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think you really need to look at yourself and think, am I the sort of person who has the resilience to cope with the ups and downs that running your own business brings? Because in one day, it's like this. You get a
Yeah,
high, you get low, you get a high, you get a low. And, if you love the idea of that, running your own business is amazing. And if you love the idea that you don't know what the future brings, but at least you're going to have a say in it, running a franchise is brilliant. If you're the sort of person who's used to having a pay packet, used to having, bonuses or whatever, regular paid holidays, and the thought of not having that sends you into a panic attack, then maybe you need to be really honest with yourself, because I think that is the most important aspect of the business. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? At least you've tried. But if you're so fearful and panicked that you're actually paralyzed into not taking action, then that would be my advice: is to take a good hard look at yourself, be really honest, and does that excite me or does that fill me with fear? Because
yeah.
that's an important question, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can overcome that fear though in the long run. I think what I've realized being around franchisors a lot is you once you start to normalize it, you see that they're taking risks all the time and they're okay, right? You sort of go, yeah, it's not so bad. And what if it doesn't work out? What do I do then? Well, I'm fairly confident I could find another job. Go back to what I was doing after three
Yeah,
months. It's not the end of the world. But you're right. If you're in that stage where you're so fearful, I was in the past about starting my own business, really fearful.
yeah,
Um, yeah, don't do it then. Wait until you've got your
yeah.
mindset right and you're in a position where you're comfortable with those risks, those challenges, those ups and down days like you mentioned, and from that point, onwards, you'll know what's the right decision for you. So yeah, I
I
think it's
think
really
you're
good
right,
advice.
actually. That is true what you say. Everything has its time. And, that's what we say to anyone looking to buy a franchise with us. We're like, just start the journey, one foot in front of the other, and it will either take you to X or Y. But if you don't start, you'll never know. And actually, maybe not now, but maybe in the future, who knows, but basically, try and start and see where it takes you. I think that's my
Yeah,
advice to people,
it's
because it
an
just might.
opportunity to learn, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Fantastic. Well, Sam, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for sharing your experiences, your story, and telling us a bit more about your business. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you. So, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Really appreciate it. Take care.
No
Bye.
worries. Bye.